Hey everybody, Larry Lawton here. I got a good video for you today. And it's a video on your first 24 hours in prison and what Infographics did for it. And to be honest, they got this one pretty wrong, but we're gonna go over their video and I'm gonna tell you what is wrong and what is right in that video. It's gonna be a fun time here. Before I get started, check us out on Patreon, YouTube, all member programs, merch. Check my book out in the link below, Gangster Redemption. Crazy ride, people are loving it. So just check all that kind of stuff out in the descriptions below. Now we're gonna get started. This video was sent to me and it says it's what's gonna happen and why the first 24 is the most dangerous time in prison and what's gonna happen, the process. And this is where they get it wrong. Pretty much there's a lot wrong with this video. So if you went to this and wanted to go to prison and saw this video, you'd think a lot different. I'm gonna give you the truth of the matter, but we're gonna get going right away.
Would you survive the first 24 hours in prison? Maybe.
Would you survive the first 24 hours in prison? Absolutely you would survive. In fact, the first 24 hours is gonna be easy time in prison, not the hard time. Let's keep going.
Depends on if you know what to expect. Don't worry though, we got you covered in this video. From start to finish, we'll tell you what the first 24 hours in prison are really like, and what to do if you ever find yourself in this position. Introduction to the prison system starts before the accused is actually locked up, so you can think of this first part as a prequel to what's to come. The criminal needs to be tried and convicted by a jury of their peers, and then sentencing can occur. The inmate hears the words, "You've been sentenced to prison," and the next thing they know, they're being prepared for transfer to their new home.
This is correct. Obviously, you have to be sentenced to go to prison. I mean, that's a given. You have to be sentenced. Once you are sentenced, before you're sentenced, now there's two ways this happens. If you're being held in a county jail with no bond and then are sentenced to a lengthy sentence, you have already been in the system to a degree. It's still a county jail, has nothing to do with prison, so there's a big difference. If you are a person who is from the streets, had bail, never been in jail or prison, and then they say, boom, sentenced, actually at the trial, they take you right there, they fingerprint you right there, and then they bring you into the back cell holding area, and then you are transferred to whatever, not facility, we'll go there in a minute.
The inmate is placed in a transport vehicle to whatever prison will be their final destination.
That is not true. You are not going. In the state system, you're gonna go to what they call an intake facility, or like they'll have a reception center. And that reception, they have a Florida reception center not far from where I live. That facility is where they're gonna classify you, where they're gonna do the initial stuff you get done before you are sent to whatever prison you go to. Obviously, if you are being held in whatever holding facility, they have to know what classification you are. Let me give you a little quick note of what that means. Larry Lawton was classified as an armed robber, violent offender. I was ended up being classified to a penitentiary, which is a maximum security prison. If you are a doctor and you do taxes, you're not gonna go to a maximum security prison. You have no record, you're gonna go to what they call a camp. If you're maybe a first-time offender, a bit younger, and it's not a violent offender, you might go to a low security prison, or you might go to a medium security prison. In the federal system, the Bureau of Prisons in Washington actually classify you. They get all your case information, and then you get classified to a prison. Let's say you got bond, and then you get arrested, you get convicted. After your conviction, they're gonna take you to a county jail. Yes, a county jail. In the federal system, they might have a federal holdover, like in Miami, they have what they call FDC, Federal Detention Center in downtown Miami. If you were convicted in a crime in Miami, a federal crime, you would go to that FDC. That's your, so to speak, holding cell, or that is, so to speak, your county jail. Most areas don't have a federal detention center right next to them. They do in New York, MCC, and different places. So you don't just go to a facility. They're not saying, okay, convicted within 24 hours, you are going to a prison. No, it takes a little process. The BOP doesn't work that. Bureau of Prisons means BOP. Does not work that fast. So you have to get at least classified temporarily to a prison. They screw that up a lot. And you all know about a friend of mine getting killed because he was misclassified.
This could be a bus, a van, or some other secure vehicle which may house other inmates that are going to be locked up as well. Once the prisoner arrives, the intake process begins. This will take up the first few hours of their time in prison. The handcuffed inmate is led by armed guards from the transport to the reception area.
No inmate is led by armed guards to the transport center into the prison. There are no guns in a prison, period. No guns ever enter into that prison, period. Never, ever, unless there's a riot, obviously, and there's something different going on. There's no guns in the prison. Even in maximum security prisons, there's no guns inside. The only guns in that prison are in an armory, obviously, or in the towers, the gun towers that shoot down. There's where your guns are. There's no guns in the prison. So no two guards like this picture are walking somebody in with pistols on their hip. That's not happening.
This is where things get serious and a little uncomfortable. First, the inmate's identity is checked and put into the system. This is so their every move and action can be recorded while in prison, from what they eat to what cell they're contained in.
Yes, all their information is put in the system again and again and again. Every prison you go to, they take your information. They have to know exactly who you are no matter what.
When the prisoner was first arrested, their fingerprints and mugshot were taken during booking and entered into a government database. However, at some prison facilities, they will repeat this process for their own records. The inmates' ink-covered fingers are pressed against paper.
Ink is out. Ink hasn't been in for years. Ink hasn't been in for years since I was in prison. And I got out of prison in 2007. It's all electronic. You put your hand down on a piece of glass with 5 points. Your fingers go up against these points, and they have your fingerprints to make sure who you are. There is no more ink. And every facility does that. Every single facility. They have to know who you are beyond a shadow of a doubt. They're not taking a chance that there's this slip up, a description slip up, look at a picture, the guy's beard, people change over many years. Your fingerprints is what does it. Today, to be honest, it's been a while for me, so it might even be DNA. I don't know. Today I know when I was in, for sure it was fingerprints, but not ink.
Then they stand motionless in front of a plain backdrop as their mugshot is taken once again.
That is all done in every prison, because in every single prison you go to, you get a prison ID card, a new prison ID card from that facility. On that prison ID card, which you will have and you will need for a commissary, you will need for anything in that prison that you need to show your card. Mostly they just say, what's your number? Lawton 52224004, and they'll know who you are. But they'll actually have your number. And some facilities, you have to carry your ID card around with you at all time. And on that ID card is your picture and your number. It might have your size. Sometimes they have your height, weight, and stuff of that nature on the card.
Once all the information is recorded and the prisoner is in the system, they receive a short orientation and the basic do's and don'ts of the facility.
They receive a short orientation. Not gonna happen. Not one prison does it in R&D. This process they're talking about is what they call R&D, receiving and discharge. They do not give you an orientation. They don't even say 2 words to you. They will end up processing you, and your orientation comes on the yard. It does not come in this R&D. This R&D is not where you will get any kind of orientation at all.
There will be more rules to come later, but the prison guards just want to make sure everyone's on the same page for this next part.
Never once in all my years did the guards tell you, don't do this, don't do that. Oh, don't do drugs, don't do this. What? No, they barely say 2 words, period.
Because it's about to get really intimate. It's time for the strip search. At this point, the prisoner's probably been standing patiently for quite a while as all the paperwork got done. But now they need to take off all their...
They're not standing patiently. They are in what they call holding cells. They might have multiple holding cells down in R&D, which they do, and it's actually a process system. A person comes into the facility, they get put in this one cell. He waits until they're ready to process you. You don't just start the process the minute the guy walks in. Obviously, the guards do it at their own convenience, and it depends if there's a bus coming in. Usually when a prison happens, a bus comes in, or a van, depending on what it is, comes into that facility. Everybody is in shackles and chains, are led into R&D. When you get into R&D, you are put in a cell. Everybody. And the shackles are taken off. After that is when the process starts. Not standing around for paperwork. This isn't like that. I don't care if you're one person coming in. And that has happened. Very rarely. Usually you're going to see multiple people. The only time one person comes to a main facility like that is if they're self-reporting. It does happen. You don't see that at a penitentiary. You only see that at a camp or maybe a low facility.
But now they need to take off all their clothing and prepare for one of the most uncomfortable moments of their life.
Strip searching. We're going to get into this here, and they're going to say what they say, and I'm going to show you what's wrong with that. First of all, I've been strip searched thousands and thousands of times. I can't even count them. Thousands and thousands of times. I mean, I remember being strip searched multiple times a day for weeks on end. Because every time you go for a visit in prison, going out to the visiting room, you are strip searched. Coming into the visiting room, you are strip searched. Every facility you go to, every time you're on Con Air, every time you move at all, certain areas of a prison even, you are strip searched. What it takes away is your dignity. I could stand up right now, strip, do everything you do in a real prison, and I wouldn't give a shit. It took my dignity. I don't give a shit. I wouldn't hold my little, my little penis. I wouldn't hold or anything like that. I just wouldn't do it. It takes away that little part of yourself. That little I guess this could be called dignity, I'm not sure.
The guard who conducts the strip search will not be gentle, but most certainly will be thorough. The guard runs their fingers through the hair of the prisoner to make sure nothing is hidden underneath.
I was in prison from 1996 to 2007. I don't think once, I had hair actually, a guard ever did that. You do that. I do remember, I have had a guard do that on an airplane, when you're going to Con Air, but they don't do the next thing.
Then they open the inmate's mouth wide and stick their fingers deep into it to look under the tongue and back of the gums.
I've never, in all my time, had a guard put his fingers in my mouth. Ever. They don't put their fingers in your mouth. They will ask you to open wide, stick your tongue out, up, down, They do not put their own fingers in your mouth. That does not happen.
Hopefully the prisoner doesn't have a sensitive gag reflex because the officer will be in there for a bit. They check the teeth to make sure none of them are false and concealing drugs or anything else.
Could you imagine him actually doing that? The guys would chop their fingers off. I mean, it would never, I've never ever seen it. I don't know where they got that from. And this is another country. I've never seen that in America. Maybe, just maybe, and if you're from a state that has happened, you can let me know in the comments below.
The guards check the nostrils and ears, then move to the rest of the body, rubbing and patting to make sure.
I've never been rubbed down over my whole body. Could you imagine that?
There's nothing under the skin. Then the real uncomfortable part comes. The prisoner is told to bend over and prepare for a cavity search.
First of all, when they do this, you're naked, you're standing in front of them, and when they do the genitals, they ask you to lift your own nuts, and then they say turn around, spread your ass, literally spread your ass cheeks, and they're literally examining your asshole. But if you have something up in your asshole, which is called suitcasing, it goes through. They're not putting their finger in your anus. They're not touching your balls. They're not doing it. They're not touching your body. I've never had them touch my body, except when they beat me or they did something like that. But no, I've never had them touch my body on a search. You touch your own body.
First, the genitals are inspected, and then the rectum is thoroughly examined to make sure no contraband is hidden within. After the cavity search, the guard checks the legs and feet.
And again, they can't tell if there's anything up your rectum, and that's how things are suitcased in, and whether it's notes. And I did that. I brought messages into different prisons. I brought contraband into different prisons.
Does a once over, and then it's time to move to the next part of the intake process. The prisoner gets dressed in their new standard issue clothing and is brought to the medical examiner for a quick checkup. Vitals are taken and a brief physical is conducted to make sure the inmate is in decent health. All of this information is recorded and the prisoner is sent to a holding room.
That is true. You do go medical intake. Now, the medical intake's bullshit. They already have your medical record, whatever they have, if it's coming from another prison. But if you're just coming into the prison, they will give you a once-over, and they will also give you a psychological exam, supposedly, to see if you're capable. They already checked your records to see if you're what they call a separatiste, meaning if you have another co-defendant there that you're not allowed to be next to, or a gang that's a different affiliation is there, and you're not allowed to be at that place. That's already done. That's been already. That's the initial stuff. That's when they classify you. Well, I was telling you, you're at the county jail, and they classify you. And when they classify you, they already looked at, if you're a Sureño and there's no Norteños there, there's two gangs in Northern and Southern California, they don't get along, they don't put them in the same prison. So if this is what they call a Sureño prison, a Norteño comes in there, not going to put them on the yard. So that's the difference here.
At this point, the newly admitted prisoner has been in the intake process for a few hours. They receive further information about their stay in the prison by one of the administrators of the facility. All prisons are slightly different, but the intake process between them is normally pretty similar. The length and depth of orientation will vary depending on the institution. Some are thorough and give prisoners all the information they could ever need, others not so much. Sometimes the inmate just gets thrown into the mix without so much as a piece of friendly advice. After orientation, the inmates receive their bedroll, which contains sheet, blankets, towels, and shoes.
Again, there's no orientation at all. I've never seen it. All I've seen is a guard give you your bedroll. This comes next, and it is going to be a little roll, and in that roll is going to be a sheet, no pillow, nothing, a sheet, a pillowcase, blanket, and in the middle of that there'll be like a little toothpaste bag with a little soap, a toothpaste thing, and a little bottle of deodorant usually. Now, they open the door from R&D, receiving and discharge, and they tell you what unit to go to. You go, hey, Lawton, A1, whatever, Schmidt, D2, whatever, and go out. They'll tell you. Now, sometimes, some prisons will have a guard escort you to a unit. They will literally say, go to this unit. Now, in maximum security prisons, I've said this many times, you go to what they call the hole, the shoe. You go from R&D to the shoe for captain's review. Larry, we used to have to go to captain's review because of my record and my being an asshole or being a rough guy from the prison before, whether it was fighting the prison, doing something. I had to go to what they call captain's review. And they don't just do captain's review that day. You go to the hole, and when you go to the hole, you're going to be in that hole for 2 weeks or whatever. It depends on when the captain's ready to see you. They're ready. Then they go through your record. Still no orientation, guys. None of this stuff with orientation happens until you're on the yard. So they have this all a little bit backwards, and this is any prison. Now, if you're not going to the hole from let's say you're a regular prison, you're in a low security or some of that nature, and they process you, then they take you to your unit or let you go to your unit. It's not just, hey, hold on, sir, we're going to give you an orientation right here. No, they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. Trust me. Let's continue.
This is all they'll be given besides the prison uniform on their body, so it's not uncommon for intake, the strip search, medical exam, and orientation to take 6 to 8 hours. So a third of the first 24 hours of a prisoner's first day consists of a lot of paperwork and unpleasantness.
That is true. It's going to take you a long time in R&D, but I've seen R&Ds move pretty quick. I've seen guys processed in a couple hours. Total process. If you're going from one prison or another and they know all the information, everything's done, process takes a couple hours. Not even. Yeah, in and out. Now, if you're coming to the new facility, then it takes a little more because of paperwork and stuff like that. And what they're saying is true there.
But that's nothing compared to what's to come. Next, the prisoner is led through the facility. They'll probably experience some harassment and name-calling.
That's not true. The next one is right. I've never been catcalled. I have seen little stuff. People kind of give a hint, hey, kid, looking good, something like that. But I'm not so like you see in the movies. Oh, they're all hitting the bars and all this, new meat and all that. You are new meat, but it's not like that. I mean, people don't even know who you are, yet.
This can be a rite of passage and sometimes will be used to intimidate new prisoners and put them in their place. However, some inmates recount an eerie silence as they were brought to their cell. It's unclear which is worse. It also depends on the time of day, because each day in prison tends to be a monotonous copy of the day before. The inmate's probably pretty hungry at this point, but they missed breakfast.
First of all, you always come into the facility, in a new facility, before 4 p.m. count. Because if it's during count when things are happening, you're going to be in that facility holding cell back where R&D is, and they'll count you there. See, once you walk into a prison, whether it's to the R&D, which is receiving a discharge, once you get through the front gate of a prison, you are now that prison's responsibility. And you are then counted every single day, 5-6 times a day. But 4 p.m. count is the main count. So at 4 p.m., the prison stops what it's doing and literally counts every single inmate, even in R&D. You are part of that prison. So I'm trying to think. All the times I went to prison, when I was let out, back to the yard, whatever it was always before 4 p.m. count.
And they'll have to wait until the next meal, which could still be hours away.
They will give you bag lunches wherever you are, or a meal. They'll throw a bag lunch at you, and it'll be a literally outdated juice, maybe outdated crackers, maybe a bologna sandwich or some bullshit, and it'll be in that bag, and that is your meal for that time. They always gave us a meal. I've seen them miss meals many times. I mean, obviously. Most of the times they'll give you that bag lunch, but you're hungry anyway. I mean, you just had a long process. Whether you were on a plane or you were in a van for hours. Thinking of the vans, when they transfer you, sometimes you're in a van for 6-8 hours. Doesn't matter. And when the guards stop that van to go to McDonald's, man, you can smell that shit, and it's the best shit in the world. They'll go in and eat McDonald's. I mean, not go in. They'll bring it. One guy will go get it. They're waiting in the van, and let's say you got 6 guys, 8 guys in the van. They'll come back out. They're not giving you food now. They're not giving you food. They're eating that shit up front, and you're smelling it. Oh my God, I know, McDonald's, right? Making me hungry now.
Anything else, they'll need to drop off their bed supplies at their cell. This is when they'll most likely meet their cellmate for the first time. Prisons claim to do a thorough background check and personality check to make sure the 2 inmates are compatible.
That made me laugh. I've never heard anybody say they do a personality check. First of all, in USP Atlanta, you went and got your own cell. I mean, they'd say, go find a cell. The groups of different various ethnicities, the whites, the blacks, the Hispanics, they stick to themselves. They'll see a guy come in and they'll start scoping them out. Somebody will talk to them, where you from? Hey, I'm from New York. Hey, okay, and they start talking. Hey, we got a cell back here. Come on back here. Now, in a medium security prison, or I've never been lower than that, they sometimes assign you a cell. And then you go to your cell immediately, and it's usually before the count. Then you put your bedroll down and stuff like that. I'm going to go into that in a minute.
And there's no bad blood between them. But it's unlikely this happens in every intake situation. All that new prisoner can hope for is that their cellmate's a nice person who wants to be let out early for good behavior.
Again, that was a little bit off, because they already know if that's a Norteño prison, there's not going to be a Sereno in that cell. Or there shouldn't be. That's the normal process. So please stay tuned. Please comment below, because I will be here commenting. Have a great day. Make sure your Sunday is great, and I will see you during the week. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Make good choices every day.